How's it going? Happy 420, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today, Dante. I am the owner of Full Spectrum Services. We are a CBD retail facility, and we also help people to obtain their Illinois medical cannabis card, and we provide a variety of wellness services. In addition to that, I'm the president of the Illinois Hemp Industries Association and a board member of Illinois Women in Cannabis.
All right, so I'm Dante Townsend, co-founder of Chicago Normal, also owner of Son of a Bud CBD and Hemp products. I'm, happy to say happy 420 to everybody out there that's celebrating the national holiday, for everyone who's joining in to this health and cannabis health fair. So let's get into it. A couple different topics that I'd like to discuss today with one of the most known hemp and CBD professionals within the cannabis industry is Kaylee today, just to talk about a few different things within the industry, within the health world, the health and wellness world, to pretty much shed some light on some of the things that are spoken about today and that's known and not known about CBD and health. I know that you've been pretty much involved in hemp and CBD since day one in Illinois, and even created different paths and been a part of different establishments that have led the torch for a lot of hemp and CBD businesses. So still want to talk today about a few different things, and not just CBD, really more just hemp hemp overall, as far as for what it does for the world and what it does for our bodies. So just a few different topics that I wanted to discuss with people today that may not know anything about hemp or CBD in particular, from our everyday usage and, how it affects our lives and our body and, in our minds more than that. So just pretty much anything from what is CBD? Most people would like to probably know that. You see it everywhere, CBD outside of CVS, outside the hospital. What is CBD?
So CBD, in short, is a compound found in both the hemp and medical cannabis plant, and what we think of as recreational cannabis, of course. It's a compound in the plant that's what we call non-psychotropic. So it's not going to create any sort of intoxicating effect on the body, but it does have a really positive effect as far as promoting well-being, pain relief, mood, helps sleep. So it helps a variety of health-related conditions without causing any sort of psychotropic effect, which is great for people that, have to work, or people that just don't enjoy the typical high from a recreational or a medical cannabis that contains a larger amount of THC.
How did you get involved in the hemp industry?
So my involvement is kind of backwards. A lot of people use hemp and CBD to launch into cannabis. I actually started in the cannabis industry and went into hemp. So I kind of did the reverse migration, if you will. What I really learned, though, from working within the medical cannabis establishment was there is a large population of patients that really want strong pain relief but have no desire to be high. And that's okay, but that's completely different than what we think of as the typical, cannabis user. Most of us think of somebody that wants a higher THC content that's really looking to get stoned. But what we have found is the elderly population, people over the age of 50 or people that have daytime jobs, are looking for ways to relieve their symptoms that doesn't include an intoxicating effect. So once I kind of saw this trend and people really looking for these products, it helped me to transition into the hemp industry, as I realized that there needed to be a more reliable resource, number one, for information, and two, for sourcing these products. It really bothered me as somebody that was working in the dispensary with regulated cannabis that these people were going to the gas station and they were going basically to the dollar store or on Amazon to buy these products that may or may not have been lab tested, that may or not be made with, a reputable source of hemp. So for me, I really felt that it was the responsible thing to do to start to advocate for this and become a voice for these consumers, because it really wasn't something that was being talked about 4 to 5 years ago.
Most definitely. And some people that I know, mostly everyone that I talk to in particular, that would like to use any type of marijuana, typically would like to use it for some type of relief, whether that's a pain ailment, or dealing with stress or anxiety or any of those things to that nature, and they all are really looking for cannabis, pretty much to help with that relief. But in reality, CBD is more of a better alternative for those things that most people with those situations seem to seek, or at least what I believe. So,
Absolutely. And sometimes it's finding a combination of both products together. You don't have to be just a CBD consumer, and you don't have to be just a THC user. You may find that CBD helps to relieve your pain throughout the day, but when you come home, you want a little extra something, and that's kind of where you add the THC into, your routine. And it's really okay to mix and match. And I think that we're going to see that as a growing trend, is people utilizing both high THC cannabis and low THC hemp products together to get the best effect for their condition and lifestyle.
most definitely. When you said THC and you said hemp, and then you say CBD products, most people that don't know, that are trying to look into these different means of, different methods of medicating, what do you say to those people that are out there buying hemp products? Like, when, some people may think that hemp is the same as CBD. Like, oh, that's hemp oil, that's hemp lotion, when it's not really CBD lotion or CBD products or whatnot like that. How do you help someone decipher when they're trying to explore different CBD products? What do you say to those different people?
Yeah, it's really difficult right now because, as we've seen kind of in marketing, as a lot of these businesses come online, that not all of the language is consistent. When we see something that says hemp oil, that typically refers to the hemp seed oil. So the oil that is extracted from the seed of the hemp plant. And this typically contains no THC and virtually no CBD at all. So a hemp oil or a hemp seed oil is not typically what a normal consumer is looking for. However, hemp seed oil does have a lot of great benefits on its own, as far as being potent with antioxidants and your healthy omegas and things like that. So it does still have a health food purpose, but it's not going to be the pain reliever, the anxiety reliever that many people believe it to be. So when you're shopping for your CBD products, and if you're looking for a product that contains CBD, you're going to want to find something that has CBD on the label. That may be tricky because the FDA has changed some labeling requirements, so not everybody says CBD on the label. Another term that you may see is hemp extract, or hemp isolate, or full spectrum hemp extract. So those are some terms that you may see on the label, and it's not yet consistent, but I think that that's something that we really should be pushing for as a community, to have a little bit more consistency in these labelings, because it should not be a guessing game for the consumer. You shouldn't have to have a little book full of all the different terms of, what CBD is and how it can be represented on a label. But typically right now, we see it as a full spectrum extract or an isolate extract. And just to be clear, there are two types of CBD when we're really shopping, right? We have a full spectrum CBD oil that contains all of the cannabinoids together, including trace amounts of THC, which may not be appropriate for people that are drug testing. We then have our isolate products, which is just CBD alone, isolated, no trace amounts of THC. And even newer than that, we kind of have this third category, which is broad spectrum. So it contains all of the trace cannabinoids, excluding the THC. So you have your CBD, your CBN, your CBG, all of these other minor cannabinoids that may have a medicinal benefit, but without the THC, which means this new broad spectrum category is also appropriate for people that are drug testing. So as time goes on, there's just more awesome options on the market, and I'm just kind of excited to see what the future holds.
Now, to break that down for most people that might not understand all of those different languages that we just probably spoke, when we say full spectrum, and when we say broad spectrum, and when we speak about CBD, let's start with full spectrum. Full spectrum is like a rainbow. CBD is not just a cure-all for everything, as some people
right.
CBD is that's the other stuff. Nah, CBD is just one form. It's just one part of the spectrum that she's speaking about. It's kind of like a rainbow in a sense. This plant has so many different elements that hit a tone of call it relief in a sense. So Kaylee, with both of us being hemp professionals within Illinois' industry, I got to ask you, what are some of the unknown opportunities within the hemp industry that may lie here in Illinois for job opportunities or even more from entrepreneurship that people should be looking into when they look up hemp anything in Illinois? Like, what do you suggest, or what's something that you can think of?
So what I want people to realize is pretty much anything that you could think of that you could do in the medical cannabis market or the adult use cannabis market, you can do in hemp. So if you want to grow the plant, you want to make extract, you want to design edibles, you like design packaging, or you want to run a dispensary, you do not have to go through the medical market or the adult use market to do so. You can do all of these things and apply all of those skills to hemp. So, there's just so many opportunities. The opportunities are endless. Transportation is another huge one. If you think about the amount of hemp that's being grown within the state, we're talking acres. So we're not just talking about, large facilities that maybe need a few, drivers back and forth. We're talking about acres and acres of things that need to be moved. So transportation is another huge growing sector that we see in the hemp industry. But really, I just don't want people to think that it's limited. And going back to opening a dispensary, if you don't have the funds to open a dispensary right now, which you and I both know that the requirements for opening a dispensary in the state of Illinois are inaccessible to many people. But guess what? Opening a CBD shop is not. So it's a great way to kind of get your feet wet into the industry and to gain experience without so much red tape and without such a huge financial commitment. Of course, there's going to be a financial commitment, but as far as registering for a hemp processing or a hemp growing license, we're talking about hundreds of dollars versus thousands of dollars. And for people that are just starting up, that's a make or break difference.
Yeah, and that's actually thousands of dollars compared to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for the
Yeah,
correction. Yeah.
yeah. But
Millions.
that's something.
I mean, I think when
Yeah,
we want to get technical, most people are probably about a million or over once they get through
yeah.
the
I,
dispensary application process or cultivation. To grow hemp in the state of Illinois for 1 year, just for example, your permit's $300.
yep,
So,
yep, yep. And
and
with
that
me,
doesn't limit you to just CBD. That's going back to our conversation of so many different compounds being in the cannabis plant, right? That we're not just limited to CBD or growing CBD. For example, one thing that we're really focusing on this year with genetics is CBG. And CBG has a lot of different benefits that CBD does not have, but that's not something that's necessarily regulated right now within the hemp space. It still gives us a lot of opportunity to experiment with something that may have a huge potential
yep.
for patients.
That's another spectrum that we can ride up and down that wave and see what we can
That
find
rainbow.
out. Yeah, most definitely. That's the same way that I feel as well too with the hemp industry. When I found out that things were going to be legal, of course, being involved in the cannabis industry or whatnot, but wanting to more have an easier way to access. I was able to obtain the hemp license almost as soon as they, let out the processing license. I knew I didn't have land. I knew I didn't have a warehouse to grow hemp or whatnot. And I knew I wasn't a grower, but I knew I wanted to be involved in it in some way or form. And I became a hemp processor. I had experience with doing extraction. I had experience with being able to take flour and turn it into several different things. And being able to be a hemp processor has been able to give me experience to be able to take that skill set and to be able to dive into it a lot deeper while waiting to get a cannabis license or whatnot. So being able to just gain that experience and also working with one of the world's largest greenhouses to be able to obtain that knowledge from, like you say, so many different elements from the logistics of it. Like, they got 357 logistics. There's so many different. Yeah, there's so many different. There's so many different levels to where you can take this, and it's not just the smokable. Like, you got flour that you can smoke, of course, but and it's CBD flour. Yeah, CBD flour. This is best for
And
anxiety, pain, and
most
everything.
people don't realize you can purchase it like this, right?
Yeah,
It's
you can
people
you can
get
actually
surprised
ship it across
FDA
all
seeing
50
it sitting on the
states.
counter.
Yeah. Yeah, with hemp, it's so many different opportunities, and you kind of touched on it earlier as well. And, and most people just think about the smokable side of it, but when we really think about the advancement of the future and hemp itself, it's a whole textile market, it's the pharmaceutical market. To be honest, Illinois has so much tillable land that farmers are really going to be able to benefit from this new crop. And minorities definitely need to be able to jump into this industry by purchasing land, and everyone should be able to contribute to a better earth through hemp by being able to grow something that's usable for the a brand new workforce, to be honest, generating a whole new system of manufacturing. We've been seeing that from this pandemic that we're in, with paper towel and tissue and all these different things running out. Even from infrastructure, from roads and building with hempcrete, just it being so versatile. There are so many different ways that you can, dip your toe in and just end up all around the maze or whatnot. So
Absolutely. There's so many opportunities. It's really it's endless. But kind of going back to the smokable flour thing, I think that that's an interesting to touch on when we're talking about hemp, right? Because traditionally hemp is grown where outside in large amounts of acres. So, we think of hemp normally as these really tall, lanky plants that are grown for fibrous purposes. And there are people that grow hemp for, fiber and that type of purpose. But we're almost seeing like a role reversal in the hemp industry too. We're seeing a lot of people that are starting to grow hemp for smokable flour, which is not something that we have seen a lot of in the hemp industry, is really treating these hemp genetics like we would indoor cannabis. And, one of the reasons why is because it's obviously much more expensive to grow hemp indoors. But as we see consumer needs changing, I think that we're going to see a larger diversification of ways that we're growing hemp, from hydroponics to indoor greenhouses like Color Point, and then even outdoor. But this whole smokable market seems to be a really interesting thing for a lot of people, and it's kind of the hot thing right now. I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
oh no, I definitely would see that. Last year, everyone is sitting going, that's the thing, the hemp world is a whole nother conversation when it comes to the actual work that's put in or whatnot. But everyone had, particularly the same, Rachel Berry actually just put out a report about, as far as what Illinois is yielding in comparison to Wisconsin or whatnot. So, the fact that we can have that data and be able to work with the universities to really navigate and see where this is going, and to be able to monitor the trends, and to be able to work with the people that's doing the genetics to kind of cater to the market of what's at hand. When you talk about people looking for a smokable flour at a high quality level, I've seen some of the best flour grown here in Illinois, and there's some legislation as well that's on the table now to where they've allowed cannabis industry cultivation centers to be able to use CBD or hemp biomass for different material production. But there should be some things in play to where they could work that, there should be some things in play to where Illinois only allows cultivation centers to deal with Illinois farmers and processors, because Illinois cultivation centers can only use and grow, or they can only use and sell what's grown within Illinois. But when implementing hemp, they must use they can use other states' products, which kind of shuts out farmers and everyone that's invested in CBD and hemp. Kind of shuts them out locally, and would allow them to outsource, which should be changed.
And what do you think about not being able to sell flour directly to the dispensaries and only being able to sell biomass for like a final product? I really think that at some time we should expand the conversation to allow flour sales to Illinois cultivators too, because if we're also talking about laws that are on the table, we also have another bill on the table that's trying to increase the testing procedures for hemp, right? So if we are testing it, if we are labeling it correctly, and everything is pretty much lined up the way a medical cannabis or an adult use cannabis product would be, I don't understand why it's just the biomass and why we're not also talking about selling the flour directly to dispensaries, because I'm seeing a lot of people buying flour from out of state, and I would love to see all of that going back to our local farmers and cultivators, because if you think about it, if you're a farmer that's growing, for boutique flour, you may be doing it on a scale of 1 to 5 acres. You may not have a ton of biomass to sell to these dispensaries. And what boost does that give your smaller growers? Unless you're growing a large amount of biomass, I think it's going to be hard for a lot of our Illinois farmers to get these contracts. And that's something that I'm still a little bit unsure with this, current talk on the table.
If you can use our product to make different products, let us sell our flour. We're not going to, well, that may be the thing. And that's something that I do want to talk about. Hemp and CBD as a business overall, it's definitely another mechanism to generate wealth and jobs and everything like that. But as far as the term generating, hemp has the potential, and CBD and that whole, it has the potential to surpass the cannabis industry. Everyone's talking about how much money that Illinois has made and how much money that the cannabis industry generates. But in fact, hemp will very much so bypass that very soon when we start implementing all of these different things. It's it's $1 trillion industry.
We haven't seen the peak yet. Definitely
haven't seen the peak, especially when it comes down to hemp fiber. They're going to start being able to make everything from car parts to housing materials to our carpets to our just every single thing out of hemp. And that could be something that could all be locally generated if legislation is done right.
Absolutely. That's what I would like to encourage locally too, is a little bit more thought on the production and infrastructure behind the hemp industry, right? Because we talk about these things like hemp plastic, hempcrete, hemp fiber, all of these like really cool things that like we know that we would buy and we know that they're needed, but the infrastructure to actually accomplish this and to produce these items isn't there yet. So, not just thinking in terms of growing hemp and, processing hemp, but creating these facilities and the infrastructure behind this industry is something that we desperately need too. The engineers, the builders, we need those sorts of brains too to really bring this to life so we can make these products and we can expand the industry that we need to. Because if the infrastructure is not in place, if we don't have a facility that makes hempcrete, we can't make the hemp houses and we can't have hemp builders. So it all has to start from somewhere.
Most definitely. With hemp and CBD, most people picture farmers. But when we look at people like me and you, we definitely don't fit that stereotype of the typical hemp business owners. And you being a woman, most people would definitely wonder, how does a woman get into this industry? How do you start? Where do you find the motivation? Like, you usually don't see that many women within the hemp industry, or I guess this is something that would be suspected, but actually most hemp cannabis businesses are ran and operated, with women in mind.
So that's a great thing. And I think that a lot of women are really focused on the stigma behind cannabis. A lot of people are really afraid to jump into the industry for the first time. But my advice to anyone is taking it one step at a time. If you're not ready to apply for a job, don't. Start by going to classes, getting educated. One thing that I really recommend to most people is to reach out and go to an Illinois Women in Cannabis networking event. Illinois Women in Cannabis is one of the largest networking organizations right now in the state of Illinois. It's open to both men and women, so everybody's welcome at those events. But really, that's the place to connect and meet people face to face, whether it's in the medical cannabis, adult use, or the hemp industry. It's kind of the place where everybody gathers. So getting out there and just taking baby steps is really what people need to feel comfortable with. You don't have to jump in and quit your full, daytime job in order to start being involved. Just taking it in bits and pieces, I think is really what I would recommend for most people.
Most definitely. Just like Chicago Normal is another way for people to be able to get involved within the industry, especially women that are looking for ways to be able to follow people like Edie Moore and Kiana Hughes, who have established themselves within the cannabis industry, and to be able to create spaces for people to obtain jobs and obtain education.
Absolutely. Branching out, and, you know, the more things that you can do and the more experiences that you can provide yourself, the better off you're going to be.
Well, thank you for being a part of the Chicago Cannabis Health and Wellness Fair, Kaylee. It's been very great to be able to talk about CBD and hemp. This is our second annual fair. Unfortunately, we're not able to do this together. I know we'll be celebrating 420 like it's no other, being the first time in history that cannabis is legal in Illinois. And, you know, we're not able to celebrate in hot box together. So, you know, to be able to have something like this that we can provide for the people and educate everyone, stay in the house, be safe, stay home, you know, use cannabis as much as you want to during this quarantine to be able to relieve some of your stress and anxiety, to deal with some of those worldly issues that we're dealing with. You know, light one up, don't feel bad, it's legal, it's healthy, you know.
And thank you for including me again. It was a blast last year. I'm also sad that we couldn't do this in person, but I know that we'll get to catch up soon. And thank you for including hemp in the cannabis conversation, because a lot of people don't realize hemp is cannabis too. So whether you choose to celebrate with a high CBD product or a high THC product, I wish you guys all a happy 420, and I can't wait to catch up with everybody once this quarantine is lifted at the next Chicago Normal event.